Good afternoon, everybody. I'm putting together this quick little video to show you a few updates that we've made to our digital measures platform that you should find useful in terms of being able to capture that student data that you generate by working with students on their scholarly activities. As you know, this has traditionally not been easy to do in digital measures because digital measures is a faculty-focused platform. So it's really looking at faculty activities. However, I think it is very fair to say that uh, faculty mentoring of graduate students, undergraduate students, whatever the case may be, in terms of their scholarly activities and their creative activities is an important part of what we do as faculty. And so we wanted to be able to capture that in digital measures, and I know that the graduate school wants to use some of this information as they look to request additional resources for graduate students across campus. And so knowing what types of work our graduate students are involved in and what they're producing in their scholarly careers here is very, very important to us. And so there are two types of ways in which students participate in scholarly activities. One is that they work with faculty to be co-intellectual contributors to a variety of research products. So for example, in the presentation section of digital measures here under scholarship, research, and creative activities, you will see that when you go to presentations, you can enter in students as co-authors, and you can actually list them as what their level is. So for example, in this particular presentation that was done, there are a number of graduate students who were presenters or co-authors, and so we have those marked. And so you can mark them as graduate, undergraduate, or high school, whatever the appropriate tag would be for them. So you can do that in your presentations. You can also do that under publications. So when you enter in a publication, of course, you can go back and mark those students as appropriate. So here's an example of a publication that we had this year where my graduate student was listed as a co-author on this particular paper, and so I marked him as such. And so that information is now being captured. We know what the student contribution was to this particular activity that I was involved in. We can also do the same thing on our creative, artistic performances and exhibits panel within the scholarship area. And so obviously mine's blank. I'm not a creative scholar, but you can, when you go in and add a new item, you can put in the type of work, put all the information that you normally would for a creative activity, and then list the number of co-authors that you have. Once you have those input, if any of them are students, you'll want to come back and mark them as the appropriate tag, either an undergraduate or a graduate student in this particular case. That's what's available in digital measures for tags for creative, artistic, and performances and exhibits. So once you have that information entered, of course, you'll want to save it and collect all of that information as much as possible. Now, I just need to point out that what goes into this scholarship, research, creative activities panel in general, so those three things that I just talked about, the presentations, publications, and this creative panel, if you will, those are only to be used when you have an intellectual contribution to that area. So I had an intellectual contribution in the publications that are listed. I'm listed as a co-author. I also have graduate students who are listed as co-authors. And so this is the appropriate place to put that, where both me and my graduate students, or my undergraduate students, or my high school students, whatever the case may be, are contributors to the intellectual endeavor that we're, or creative endeavor that we are engaged in. However, we know that there are times when faculty are actually involved with students on creative and scholarly activities for which the faculty member is not a direct intellectual contributor. And so in those cases, we still want to capture that information because that information is very important for a variety of purposes, actually. But we're going to capture that under the Directed Student Learning panel. So if you'll go to your Directed Student Learning panel, you will see that we've made some changes. So when you go to add a new item, under involvement type, we have now included, down here at the bottom, okay, it's just alphabetical, or that's not alphabetical, but this is the last ones that we entered. That's why they're at the bottom. You'll see mentored student publication and mentored student creative activity. These labels are to be used, or these involvement types, excuse me, are to be used when you have mentored a student to produce some type of intellectual work or creative work. So let's take, for example, let's say I'm working with a student and they have put together an essay that they're going to have published in a journal. But I have done no intellectual contribution to that essay. That essay is completely their intellectual property. I had, but I'm going to mentor them through the publication process. So they've put together their work, and I'm working with them to figure out how it is that you go about taking something that you've written down and getting it published into a scholarly journal. So I have actually, my activity is one of mentoring here. So I'm going to put mentored student publication. You'll then put the student's name, their last name, the title of the student's work, the stage of completion. In this case, since it's a publication, I'm going to put published. We should only be entering these things in if we have one of these stages. So you can actually do proposal, in process, completed, and published. But for this purpose, let's say I'm entering this in after the student has published the work. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put published, not completed, but that the student has published the work. So I'd select published. I would then enter some comments on this, and these comments really should be focused on your role as a mentor in helping that student achieve that publication. So you can put that information in. You can put in how much time you spent with the student. You're pretty much so open to put in whatever you want to there that describes your role in this particular activity. Under evidence of activity, if you want to, you can upload evidence of that activity. So for example, in this case, if this student published this essay in a journal where the student listed in me as gave me thanks in the acknowledgement section, I might want to upload that as evidence of the activity to show that yes, indeed, the student actually acknowledged my work. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have the start date and the date that this was completed. So very important on dates here. Make sure that your date range is for the date in which you were doing this activity of mentoring this student towards the publication. You can also do the same thing for mentored student creative activity. So maybe you have a student who is putting together a showing of a variety of creative works or artistic works, and the student has created all of those pieces on their own. You had no intellectual contribution to that or creative contribution to that, but you are mentoring that student and taking that creative activity and putting it forward as an exhibit or show, whatever the case may be. And so you put in your information. You would then, of course, not use publish because they're not publishing this work, they're completing it after they've shown it. So you would put completed. You could then come in and put any comments that you want to, and you can actually put evidence of that activity in there as well. Remember, you can upload any kind of file, but maybe, for their show or maybe it was a play or whatever the case may be, they've got a playbill of some sort that lists you, giving thanks for your mentoring or whatever there. You might want to upload that. Maybe you want to upload a picture that somebody took of you and the student actually working together to put something together for a show or a play, whatever the case may be. And again, the date started and date completing should be for the mentoring activity that you worked with the student on. So this is an area where you're really going to want to capture the information about those activities that you're doing for which you're not an intellectual contributor in terms of the product, but you are a mentor helping that student achieve their goal of having their intellectual property shown or published or whatever the case may be. So again, we want to make sure that you're capturing all of this. The graduate school would like to be able to pull some of this information for their purposes within the next couple of weeks. So please take a little bit of time, go into Digital Measures, get into your account, and update your publications, your presentations, your creative activities, but also don't forget about that directed student learning here where you can actually capture the mentoring role that you have been performing with students on their activities as well. So Hopefully you found this short little video helpful. Please spend some time going in and updating your information. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, douglas.masterson@usm.edu. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.